Yeah, too.
People of EponaFest, welcome again in the main hall. How is everybody doing? Good, perfect. You had a moment to check the artist LA and to hydrate yourself. You hydrated yourself, right? Perfect. That's how we're about to start. We're about to start with this incredible panel of dedicated to two incredible artists that are signing all the My Little Pony. They are an historic My Little Pony presence in our fandom. So, they both graduated in Joe Kubert School of Cartoon and Graphic Art. Comic artists for My Little Pony Friendship is Magic comics. May I present to you Andy Price and Tom Zahler. Welcome. It's so nice to have you here. How was the journey?
Oh, it was great. We've got to spend some time in Milan.
Oh.
So we totally got your Milan Centralo joke during the opening ceremonies. Yeah, and then we're spending like another week here in Italy as well. So it's my first time here.
My first time.
Okay,
Yeah.
I really hope
Yeah.
you're finding yourselves
Oh, my.
good.
It's been amazing.
I'm just going to eat everything. I just want a plate of ham here while we do this. I want.
That's a good choice.
Yeah, the
You
food
should
here
do that
is
too.
just incredible. Yes, people should bring me ham. Yes.
What?
You say that, and then for the next 2 years at every show we do.
I mean, I don't see the deficit to this. I don't see a problem.
It's because you're not sitting next to it.
Okay. So, there's going to be some videos in the background showing some process that we asked both artists to give us while they were drawing. Tom Zahler for the comic book, the alternate art for our comic book. I don't know if you've checked on it already. At the info booth, there's going to be a comic about the adventure of Millie and Perry that we posted on our socials. And Tom Zahler made us an alternate cover. So thank you very much for that. And so
Now that I see what's on the screen, do you want me to talk about this at all?
if you have something to say about it, I'm going to move out of the
I don't know
way.
anything to say. It's just
I
awesome.
think.
No, this
Better
is
this way.
how I laid out the cover. A lot of times I'll start out digitally. I'll work in Clip Studio or Photoshop. I'll do layers upon layers upon layers, so nothing ever comes out perfect. It's always iterations going up. This looks like, because I drew this a long time ago, that's got to be me in Clip Studio working out the roughs for what the cover is going to be, figuring out the characters, how large they're going to be, and what the background's going to be, where the logo is going to be. Did this repeat? Is this the...
Yeah,
or is
we'll repeat.
You're inking.
Right.
It was red earlier.
Okay. Yeah, I'll work in different colors just to keep layers separate. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is still the rough because those inks
Okay.
don't seem right.
I have a question for you,
And that's
Tom.
the cover layout. So I start with a rough layout and then I get more complicated on top of it. Yeah.
I have a question for you. In this convention, I'm pretty sure that many people also watching us from twitch.tv are artists or wannabe artists that would like to draw comic books as their dream. And I want to ask you a question for them. Every time, you can answer both, okay? Every time you draw anything, that could be just a character design or an entire composition, how many layers do you have?
Oh.
How many layers will
Yeah.
Procreate allow me
Yes,
to do?
Oh,
exactly.
no.
I have broken that once or twice.
Yeah.
It depends on the comfort and on the complexity. So if I'm doing characters I haven't done before, if it's a really, really complicated layout, that will take more layers than just drawing one character in front of a flat background or like I can draw a Pinkie Pie all day long. But if especially like with the School of Friendship characters, where they start bringing in different creatures, and those are different body types. If I haven't drawn those before, those will take a lot longer to figure out.
Interesting. And another thing I want to ask you both, so you can reply both. Is there, as far as you can remember, is there a comic page you spent thousands of years on?
Yeah.
Something that is really inside your memory and lives rent-free in your memory.
There's been a few of them, but in issue 17, 18, something like that, there's a storyline called Reflections, where you find out that Celestia is crossing over to like a mirror universe where Sombra is good, and they have had a centuries-long romance between the two of them. And there's a scene where they enter this big garden, and it was a 2-page spread, and it was there's hundreds of ribbons like the wish wall in Rome. It's a Japanese tradition where you would write down a wish and you would hang it in trees. We did this and this, and I just did hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these little ribbons and lights and stars and individual leaves, and it went crazy. But every once in a while I'll get a page where I just decide to go nuts. I've got a couple downstairs that I can show people to see. This is why I wear glasses, because I ruin my artwork on these tiny little drawings, or ruin my eyesight on these tiny little drawings.
Yeah, anything with a crowd scene, and I write too many of them. Along with My Little Pony, I do some romance comics, Cupid Zeros and Warning Label. And in Cupid Zeros, I did a scene that took place at a comic book convention, and I set it at Dragon Con in Atlanta, which is the most distinctive comic book convention I've ever gone to, because everybody's always in costume. So you can't do just generic figures. You have to do original costume characters, or it won't look like Dragon Con. And I hated me for writing that story. Yeah, that took forever.
That's perfectly understandable. And another thing I'm really curious to ask you, because drawing comic books, but drawing in general, is an art that, like music, it brings out all the emotions on the piece of paper or on the music paper. Have you ever, like in your experience, in the whole experience, not just My Little Pony, okay, but in your whole experience, have you ever faced very strong emotions while drawing a scene for a comic book?
Yeah. Typically with My Little Pony, it's usually overexcitement or
Could be any emotion,
happiness or whatever, because one of the things that a lot of people appreciate about my artwork is I'm very expressive with the characters' faces, and I do that. I really push that on the page because we don't have the advantage of a voice actress to supply the emotion. So I have to do it visually. So I really, really push it. And a lot of times with artists, when we're drawing somebody that has an expression, you catch yourself doing the expression. A lot of artists keep a mirror next to their table. Like,
I do.
Really?
What does that expression look like? And you can look in the mirror and go, okay, that's what it looks like.
I'm not sure that thing happened with Mod Pie.
You don't need a mirror, you just need a photo of. That's Mod Pie. That's every emotion, you know. But yeah, I do that a lot, because if I'm not feeling the emotion of what I'm doing, then I don't think the reader is going to pick it up. Our job is to tell the story visually. If you can't understand what's going on by just looking at the page, we have failed. So that's where I put a lot of myself into it, is the emotions.
Yeah, my emotional hits tend to be in writing and weirdly in lettering, because I'm adjusting the script. When I'm drawing it, I can isolate on part of it, and it becomes a production. Like I'm working on that drawing. The motion has already burned through because I've written the story. But I have had I can still go back and read a couple things that I've written, and if I've done it right, I really will miss up at it. I have, and one of my favorite things is that I have readers who will come up and say that my books made them cry, like in a good way, but made them cry, and I appreciate that because your tears keep me young. At BabsCon, we finally named my OC. It's fan tears. So, yeah, and I take that, like that means a lot to me. I'm not just doing it because I'm cruel. I really do appreciate it.
He's also cruel.
Okay. So you mentioned. Oh,
You okay?
never mind. That will be fixed later. You mentioned the story part. Do both of you do storyboard for the comics as well, or that gets done by someone else usually? Because I'm more interested.
Yeah.
I'm no artist, but I sometimes find myself writing stories for other purposes.
Sure. Well, you wrote The Last Friends Forever.
I wrote the last issue of Friends Forever, and I've contributed bits and pieces to other stories where things didn't work, and I would work it out with the writer. But the last issue of Friends Forever was entirely me. I wrote it, drew it, all of that. Thank you, fan. I write occasionally. I don't do a lot of writing with the ponies. I'll come up with ideas, but other people beat me to the punch. But I've written some horror comics as well that are fun to do. I kind of struggle with writing. It's a slower process for me than it is for Tom, if you get Tom a bottle of wine, by the end of the night, you have 3 comics written. And if you get me a bottle of wine by the end of the night, I just want another bottle of wine. So.
Yeah. So I wound up writing a lot more than drawing after the first that I did. Hang on, I'm just going to check. See. Okay, yeah, that's still the rough. Because I had to send it to you guys to approve it. But it would. I'm sorry, I spaced on the question altogether.
Just the process of story writing.
So I went up to pitch on My Little Pony. I just wanted to draw a cover, and then they asked if I would pitch the book, and I said, "Well, I'm not an idiot." Yes. So I went home and I mainlined the show, and I learned about the characters, and then I pitched a bunch of stuff, and then after that I just kept pitching and coming up with more and more stuff. And when we do the scripts for Hasbro has to approve everything, so there's not as much opportunity to fine-tune and change things as they go. Like, one of the things I like about working with Andy is my scripts get funnier when he's on them, because he will throw in so many jokes that I didn't have in there. There's one that I wrote that's about Rarity going to Manhattan, and she finds out that the 80s have come back. And there's so much stuff in the background and so much stuff he built out with Manhattan and some of the fashion choices that those were not in my script. Those were Andy. But I like finding that one true thing I want to tell in a story, like something that means something and resonates to me, and then I build the story out around it. What am I doing? Oh, this is actually me inking. Okay.
Yeah, the previous one had some artifact problems on the video part.
Yeah, we can see the inking process there, and you did it by hand. I was not expecting that, actually. I thought you were doing it digitally.
Yeah, I drew it digitally, which makes it easier to move figures around.
Mm-hmm.
But I like having originals. One, I just like the process, but two, practically it gives me an original to sell, because nobody wants to buy my digital files, but they'll buy the original artwork. And at where we went to school, we were trained to ink with brush. So most of the figures there are inked with brush, and then the backgrounds will be done in technical pen. And that's I really enjoy that process of working with a brush.
Yeah, I do a lot of the same. I will draw things out in Procreate, and that way I can, Luna looks great, but she needs to be here. And so I can do that a lot easier than I can traditionally penciling something out. But once I have the pencils ready, then I print those out very, very faint, and I do my inking on top of it. I hate digital inking. I think it looks digital. I don't think it looks
Handmade.
very organic. Or organic, yeah, very handmade. And then again, I've got an original. I've got an original that I can sell or contribute or whatever.
Yeah.
And talking about originals, you also Andy brought back the original for the T-shirt. If you guys haven't seen the T-shirt yet, which will be an item for the charity event. So,
Yeah. Do you guys have like a room or anything set up with items for the charity event?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we have a safe room.
Okay. So you guys can actually see the original.
Yeah, we will bring it during the charity.
Yeah.
At least.
It's going to be a charity exclusive.
Yep.
Was I doing the same for the cover? I don't remember.
Don't.
Okay, I'll look into it.
If you have it, we're
I do.
more
The cover is at my table. This one is at my table.
If you have it, we're more than welcome to have it.
Look, speaking about the drawing process, okay, we talked about storyboarding, we are seeing an inking process. Digital art arrived in the first years of the 2000. Okay, I am curious, what was your impact to the impact to digital art, like from paper to digital or vice versa?
I hated it. Hated it. I still have a grudge against it in some aspects.
Why?
But, well, I was trained traditional.
Of course.
And in digital, it feels very sterile. I can't get my hands dirty playing with the colors and everything like that. I'm like,
The sensation of paper, maybe.
yes. Like when I do a painted cover or whatever, I come away, I've got paint on me, I've got ink on me, I've got ink on the cats. I feel like I've put myself into it. It's part of it. And it took me a long time to get over digital because a lot of the effects people are doing digitally, they're like, push a button.
Meep.
And now there's a sky. Push a button. And I was like, or you could make it. Mm-hmm. However, a lot of my old man views have calmed down because I do a lot more with digital now. I still, like I was saying, I still print things out in ink because I prefer traditional inking. It looks better, it feels better, but there are a lot of advantages in digital. We do a lot of trade work and things like that and covers, and some things just print better from digital art. Also, like we were on the train here and we're both working. You can't really do that with pencil and ink. I mean, you can, but it's going to look terrible.
All the train table
it's
full
gonna be,
of stuff.
But with doing roughs on digital, you're like, it doesn't matter as much. I can clean that up easily. So I still do the majority of my work traditional, but I've come around. I do a lot more digital now too.
Yeah, I had to give myself a small assignment to learn how to work digitally because I couldn't do it on something I was getting paid for because it was making me slower, and then I felt like I wasn't being the right amount of productive. But I gave myself a little assignment to draw like one superhero a day, and after the end of the month, I got to the point that my digital ink line looked enough like my traditional ink line that I was happy with it. And like I miss having more originals, but that's why I keep doing covers as originals. But for interiors, especially on my work, digital is just so much faster. I do a book called Love and Capes, which is a superhero romantic comedy, and one of the things I did on that is I treated it like it was animated. So I was drawing characters, but I was reusing backgrounds, and that would get me faster because I want to be able to tell and generate more stories. And if you're really paying attention to all the books on the bookshelf in Abby's bookstore, then I'm doing my job wrong. So I I really appreciate the speed at which I can do digital, and for a lot of the less comic book, more illustration work that you do when you're designing a trading card for someone or something like that, sometimes just being able to do digital because they're going to do revisions and revisions. That's going on right now with me and the Angry Birds comic. It's just nice to be able to go back in that digital file and tweak it when they ask you to, rather than have to jump on your page and try to figure out a way to paste it and do digital patches and all of that stuff.
Yeah, digital has its advantages, and but
Yeah.
let's say that you started with traditional and you sense the jump from one to another, and now we are seeing a coloring process here.
Yeah, so the other advantage to doing digital color is if I decide I don't like a color, I just get rid of it and I switch over to a different color, which I did this a lot. I couldn't decide, do I want a bright sunny sky? Do I want a sunset? Do I want, so I went back and forth to a lot of things. Or if I get it done and I decide I don't like the overall color, I can tweak one or two things to change it. And that's a lot easier to do digitally than it is traditionally. There's advantages to both. Doing digital, I can mess around with the color forever. But that in itself is its own trap. Now I've just spent forever messing around with color rather than finishing it. Doing traditional, once that color's on the page, you're pretty much committed. So you don't get as many opportunities for fixing mistakes. You have to learn to adjust your mistakes. If you make a mistake on the paper, you have to figure out, all right, I screwed this up. How do I now make it work? Which I've got a couple of covers. Oh, and now I'm inking. I've got a couple of covers that if you guys look at it, you're not going to see it, but I look at it and I go, there's that mistake, there's that mistake, there's that mistake, there's that mistake, and I had to make it work. The cover for issue 1 had a big mistake on it. Those were done with markers, and I went to color Twilight, and this big drip of ink hit the paper. And not on Twilight, which would have been her color. It hit elsewhere, and I had to fix it. I had to make it work. I was like, I'm this far into it, I can't start over. And you scream and you yell and you throw the marker, and then you fix it. So.
That's part of the process.
All right, Tom mentioned inking with a brush. That's what I'm doing here, is I am inking by brush.
Wow.
And unfortunately, in the video, you'll probably either see the back of my head or the top of my hand more than you will the actual work, because I've got to hold the camera here and do this. I don't really have a camera set up.
That's all right. You were talking about the process of the difference between the fact that in traditional you have to be committed once you decide a color. Just a curiosity by me, since I'm not really in the art world. Do you think that's a good thing to just develop more of a sense of seeing what's right and wrong, or?
I think it's like math class. Maths class. Because I think you should learn how to do everything longhand so that you know what steps you're skipping when you're going on a calculator. So kind of the same way, I need to know how to draw traditionally so that I know what steps I'm skipping when I'm drawing digitally. And it gives you a much more full... Oh, hey, there's your cat.
Oh, that's Morticia. Yeah, your traditional is going to help your digital is going to help your traditional. You're going to learn from each steps that you can take into the other.
And like I became a better colorist when digital came along because I had trouble visualizing how all the colors were going to work. But once I could start getting into Photoshop sliders and changing the colors, it wasn't so much that I needed to do that all the time, especially like the first issue of Love and Capes, I had to correct my colors every page. Like I would always make them too saturated and I'd have to bring it down a little bit. But after a month of that, I figured out what I was doing, and then I understood how the colors were going to play together. But I wasn't able to do that mentally before I put colors down. I needed to do it digitally, move everything around, and then understand why things were working or not working together.
So overall, it helped to both of you. It helped both having the traditional and then the switch to digital.
Yeah, I think you need both, because there are, like, it eventually comes down to a basic drawing problem, and you need to know because anytime you have a drawing that's not working, you've something far down in your starting point is messed up, and you need to know how to take it back to the basics. Like, if you guys, any of you read How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, it talks about drawing with cylinders and cubes and boxes, and that's how we all start. And then at a certain point, you kind of do some of that in your head, and you can jump ahead a few. But when you get a hand that isn't working, you realize that you have the construction wrong, and you need to be able to go back and figure out, this is how the basic shapes would have worked, and this is where you lost it.
I see.
I would like to go back in time for a few seconds.
I would too.
Yes, I would like to go back to that request for ham. We still don't have ham.
No.
So, no, I'm sorry.
No, don't worry. That was good. Now, I would really love to know what, when you decided to study and to graduate in graphic art. And I would really love to know first of all, what was your family's reaction, and second, if what brought you to this decision?
Comic books. I mean, I grew up reading comics. I learned to read on comics. That was always my world, and I was drawing it all the time. So with my family, it was no surprise to them that I wanted to do something with drawing. My mother was very supportive about sending me to the school. The school that Tom and I both went to was a very, very tiny little school that started in 1976 by the artist Joe Kubert. You might not necessarily know his name, but you would know his characters, Hawkman and Sergeant Rock. He worked for DC since he was, 12? Was his first work? Something like that?
His first work was 12, but I think he was at DC at 15 or 16, because he was working on it for Will Eisner before that.
And he decided at some point there is no method to teach people to do what we do. I'm going to start a school. And so he bought a small piece of property, and he started teaching kids out of this old house. And it just kept going and kept going and kept going. The school is still there, but it has grown larger. And a lot of people in the industry now came from that school. And at the time we went, that was really the only option you had to learn anything like this. There was no other programs anywhere. Now there's a lot more options out there at different schools, but for us, that was our only choice.
Yeah. I got it in. It's kind of the same story. My dad, I'm the oldest of 5, and my dad read a book on how to raise kids, and it said there's no reason a 2-year-old can't read. So he started me off doing phonics lessons, and then he found out I like comics, so he bought a lot of comic books, and it became the reward system. Like, if I cleaned my room, I got a comic book. So I had a lot of comic books, and my parents had a really well-behaved kid. But it was always there. I have no memory of not wanting to be a cartoonist. Like, the closest analogy I can think of is Star Wars. Like, I didn't have a choice. This was, my midichlorian count was too high, and I was just always going to be a cartoonist. Most of my family was very supportive. My mom was the one who was more reluctant about it. And she wasn't reluctant because it was comics. But when you go into comics, it's like going into a professional sporting league. Because I want to make a basketball reference, but I feel like football is better at.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, all sports are well accepted.
But when you go into professional sports, there's a new crop of people who break into the league every year, but there are very few of them. So my mom was more worried that it wasn't that she didn't think I could do it. She thought that the opportunity window was so small that what if I bounced off of it? She is now my was the one who fought to have me go to the Kubert School, which is why my publishing company is named after my grandmother. But my mom is now my biggest fan. Once she saw, and like there's an education process where you're talking about the difference between freelance and traditional work. But at one point after Comic-Con in San Diego, she gives me a call and she's like, "Do you have work coming in?" I'm like, "Yeah, Mom, I've been doing this for a while. I got work coming in. Why?" She's like, "Well, I need to be supported in the manner to which I've become accustomed." And I said, I can still send you all my bills. But I said, you've got 4 other kids. You've got like a lawyer and a teacher and an engineer and whatever Mike does. And like you're calling me. And she says, yeah, I know which one's doing best. So yeah, huge fan.
Nice. And back to the present. Now we did the small travel into the past, and now back to the present, because I want to ask you the question that I ask every artist: the character you love to draw the most, and the one you hate to draw the most. Character.
Well, within the world of ponies.
Mm-hmm. Within the world of ponies is fine. Yes.
These are the 2 favorites, are Celestia and Luna. They are my favorites to draw. But when we started the book, I absolutely hated drawing Celestia and Luna because they're very unique. I like them now because they are very unique. But as Tom said earlier, the ponies, it's kind of cookie cutter. You can do Pinkie Pie all day and you can do Twilight all day because they're almost exactly the same. Pinkie, Applejack, Rarity, same body, same body, same body. Mm-hmm. You just make sure, oh, this one has a horn. This one has oval eyes. This one has almond eyes. There's just tiny little details that you just have to remember, but otherwise, it's an assembly line. That assembly line stops when you come to Celestia and Luna. They each have a unique body shape. They each have unique eyes. They each have unique features. They each have unique design, and it's like it's slowed down the process. Mm-hmm. It's like, God damn it. Now I got to draw these 2. But now because they are so unique, and I did my own little additions to them to kind of make it more attractive to me. On the show, Celestia and Luna have these kind of diaphanous, foggy manes that you can see through. And I was like, I'm not drawing that. I'm not drawing the background through their hair. So fair. I gave them hair. But I gave them a very unique style to their hair that I kept to them. And it made them fun to draw, and it made them attractive to the fans, so it worked. So yeah, they're my favorites to draw. My least favorite to draw is any character I don't know. Because then I have to look up reference, and it's a slower process because I don't know it.
Or Babs Seed.
Or Babs Seed. Babs Seed is the one and only character I ain't drawing her. I don't care what the script says. I don't care what a customer wants. I'm not drawing her. She's a horrible character. She was an ugly design. She was a horrible voice. I hated her. Great song in the episode, but I hated her.
Poor Babs Seed.
Could you draw Babs Seed for me?
Nope.
We were at BabsCon, and someone wanted to get 3 characters, including Babs Seed, drawn. And I know it's harder for Andy to draw an OC. So I was taking the OC, and I gave one to Tony, and I'm like, oh, you only got to draw Babs Seed. And Andy just turned and goes, I will not draw Babs Seed.
I was like, this customer is going to Tony, and he's going to Tom, and he's got this whole idea set up because he wanted to do the Manhattan Cutie Mark Crusaders, which you never saw on the show. Mm-hmm. And of course, one of them is Babs. And Tom thought, well, that's a show character. That's going to be easiest for Andy. I'll just leave it for him. And he said that to me, and I was like, Tom, that is the one character I will not draw. But we figured it out.
Yeah.
We just traded off characters.
Yeah. Teamwork.
Yeah.
My favorite to draw probably is Pinkie Pie. She's the default anytime someone wants a head sketch because she's always in motion. And I just like the energy she brings. And my least favorite is still Rarity because my brain cannot process her hair. And
Oh, well.
I can't. I know it's just a ribbon.
Just a ribbon.
Apparently, I don't know how ribbons work either. But her hair is so curly and twisty, and
It's a parking garage.
I can't. Yeah.
My God. You were talking about drawing OCs and in Babscon, which I know, Andy, you loved the Bab seed and everything, and now. If you had a pony OC, how would it be?
We
I do have one.
Yeah.
My
Right.
pony was
Then
on,
describe it.
My pony was on the show.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice.
In season 3, season 4, there's an episode where Twilight has to leave Ponyville to go do something. And she's like, Spike, you're in charge. But there is a conference going on of ponies from all other areas, because you see all these ponies walking around with badges. And myself and Katie Cook, who started the book with me, who was the writer for issue 1, were animated into the show. And they just took the designs that I did. I made Katie and myself as ponies in issue 1 of the book, and they just took those designs and animated them. So yes, I have my OC. My OC is named Leadwing. I'm a big Batman fan. His cutie mark is a number 2 pencil with the scallop bat wings, and he's blue and gray like Batman.
Very nice.
So that's mine.
Thank you.
And mine is, newly named Fan Tears. And it's a green unicorn, and he appears with Tony Felice's OC, which is Pony Felice, which is just my favorite name. And the two of us get made dumb by Twilight Sparkle in the Ponies of Darkwater story, where all the main 6 all turn evil, and I needed victims, and I'm like, well, it's time I appear in the book then. So yeah, that's where Tony. I think Tony probably appeared before me, but yeah, that's where my character makes his first appearance.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So I was curious, when you started to work with IDW on My Little Pony, were you, for example, was there an application to do? Did you apply for it, or they contacted you? And how was your reaction if they contacted you for it?
So, I mean, I've been doing comics and freelance work professionally since '92, but nothing like Pony. I've been doing conventions for many years, and I was at a convention not long after I started watching Pony. The show had come on, it was starting to get very popular. People were telling me, you need to watch the show. And I was like, I think of that show as a product for little girls. I mean, I grew up knowing that My Little Pony was little girls' toys. You brush the little mane and you make them dance and everything. My niece played with them. So I was like, why would I have any interest in the show? But I started watching it, and I was like, this is brilliant. And so I started drawing them for fun. And about 2 months after that, I was at a convention in Chicago, and a customer came up and said, have you watched the show? And I was like, yes, I've just started watching it. Would you draw ponies for me as a commission? Sure. So it was my first hired job to do. And I was drawing a commission of Applejack and Fluttershy, and Katie Cook came by the table and she went, are you drawing ponies? I was like, yes. She was like, you want a job? Yes. And that's how you get into comics. No, she had.
Yay for knowing Katie Cook.
Yay! Yeah, Katie and I had been friends for years at that point, and she She backed into it the same way. She started watching the show, and she got on Twitter, and she went, "This show is great. I think there should be a comic book." And IDW wrote back, and they said, "We agree. Would you like to write it?" Sure. But she had known the editor and they had been looking for something to work together, and he was like, "Come write this." And she saw me doing that, and she went, "Come draw this." And that was how it happened. And I sent my work into Hasbro, and I said, my only caveat was I will not copy exactly the model sheets. If I cannot draw the ponies through my art, then I don't want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's your style after all.
Right. And they said, "Well, show us what you want to do." And I showed them what I wanted to do, and they were like, "Let's go." So that's how we did it.
So I'd been working for IDW doing Love and Capes for a couple of years before they got the My Little Pony license, and it blew up. And I got involved for the reason most guys get involved with everything. There was a girl. My girlfriend was a big fan of the book, and so I went up to him at Comic-Con, and I talked to Bobby, the editor, and I said, which I started before, is I said, can I draw a cover? Because you're IDW, you're gonna do 100 covers per issue, and I just really want to impress my girlfriend. And they said, "Do you want to pitch the book?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm not an idiot." Yes. So that's how it happened. It outlasted the relationship, but Pony has been far more faithful. Yeah, but that's how I got started. And like literally, Pony has changed. Being on My Little Pony has changed my life.
Yeah.
And changed my career. And like it's all because I took the flyer on that because I wanted to get involved and just draw a cover.
I think that works for many people, not necessarily here, but maybe
They
at home.
were trying to impress the same girl because that's
Yeah.
kind of weird.
No, I don't think so, but
I think people that are outside of the fandom still look in the fandom, and they're like, "What a bunch of weirdos." And I'm like, "Yes, we are a bunch of weirdos, but we're artistic." I have not met a fan of this franchise that is not very creative in some outlet. Music, writing, artistry. We even have cooking bronies. That I've seen bronies put together cookbooks. And it's taken me, it brought me to Italy. It took me to Singapore, and I ate a century egg, and I don't recommend that. And somebody suggested to me, "Oh, you're going to Italy? You need casu condito." And then I looked it up. And I was like,
Someone knows what it is.
I was like, "Why do you hate me?" Yeah, that's your task for today, is to look that up. But I can't imagine not working with Pony. In some facet or another. It is just amazing. It has brought me to meet astounding people. I became friends with everybody on the show, with the directors, with the actresses. I became much closer with a lot of the, my fellow illustrators. So it's life-changing.
Yeah.
I have another small question for you. Speaking about traditional art, okay. When you draw on paper sheets, you prefer drawing on a plain table like this, or with something that raises up the paper?
Oh, something that raises up.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to have your eyes be perpendicular to the paper because your drawing will
the parallax.
distort. Yeah. Where you're drawing what you think looks right, and then you pull it up, and suddenly the torso is a lot longer than you think it should be.
Yeah.
And then also it's ergonomics. Like everything in my studio is built so that I don't become one of those artists that looks like this.
Yes.
Like I need to be able to keep my posture and make sure that stuff is
The
right too.
typical laptop user.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a really expensive chair that's built to, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so yes, definitely tilted. I'm more flexible when I'm traveling and working at a show because it costs a lot to bring my drawing table with me especially overseas. So you have to make compromises there.
I'm always speaking about traditional art because digital art is another universe. The color you use the least while drawing traditionally.
The color I use the least?
Yeah. I know could be a bit difficult, but I'm really curious.
Well, most of what I draw traditionally is black and white. I have blue-colored pencils that I use to lay down the beginnings of the drawing. Blue-colored pencil and gray traditional pencil. They're animators' pencils. They're blue because when art gets scanned, or it used to be photographed, now scanned, the blue will drop out, so you don't have to erase it. And anything that keeps me from having to erase a piece of paper and tear it up is better for the original. So it lets me get a lot more of the basic drawing done without having to erase the same way.
Thank you very much. At the moment, I sadly have to leave this panel because I have another panel in the other room. So I'm saying thank you very much to you both, and I'm leaving
very
you
welcome.
in the hands of binarity.
Excellent.
All right.
Of the parrot.
I'd say
Thank you very much again.
You're very
The
welcome.
proper ready.
Thank
We're going
you.
to have to get to our tables here soon, so
Yeah,
we want to
we'll
do
probably just have 10 minutes more.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Probably have 10 minutes more just to probably cut it short.
Yeah.
A bit shorter. I wanted to make use this mic to see if there were questions from the
questions.
audience, but our service guy is not here and the microphone does not seem to be working correctly. So if you want, if you have a very loud voice, you can try it and use that because
He's got a
this
question right
doesn't
there,
seem
so.
to be working. Sure.
So when working in comics and working in licensed comics are fairly different processes. In working with Hasbro, since they own My Little Pony, every single step you do has to be approved by Hasbro. So if you're working in regular comics, you come up with a storyline, you tell an editor, I like it, you write it, it goes to the penciler, it goes to the inker. If you're doing a licensed property, every single one of those steps is interrupted by Hasbro. Here's the premise. Okay, it's good. Here's the script. It's got to go to Hasbro. Here's the pencils. It's got to go to Hasbro. Here's the inks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it slows us down. However, the brighter side of that slowdown is that Hasbro was very, very open to our creativity. We very rarely had anything where they said, you can't do this. Sometimes they would say, you can't do this because there's an idea very similar on an episode that we have coming up. Mm-hmm. Our timeline of production and their timeline of production were very radically different. By the time they had things in production, we probably had 4 things already done. But they worked ahead, farther ahead on stories more than we did. So they'd have stories written out
2 years ahead of where we were.
Right. So like one of the things that Katie and I wanted to do in the comic is we wanted to give Luna a pet because everybody else had a pet but Luna. And Katie originally wanted to give Luna a pet rock. And she was like, it's a moon rock.
Oh.
It's a moon rock. I had a different idea. And thankfully, Hasbro said, you can't have a pet rock. We have plans for a pet rock. Because Maude was in the planning stages at that point. They knew there was going to be a character with a pet rock. And I didn't want a pet rock anyway. I wanted a possum. And everybody said, well, why didn't you do like a bat? Bats are cool. I was like, because all of you want a bat. And that's too easy. That's too on the nose. It's like, got to be a nocturnal animal. An owl. We already have an owl. Okay, a possum. Possums left. And possums are great. So that's how we ended up giving her a possum. But that was the kind of thing we could do those kind of things. And Hasbro was like, that's great. When we did the storyline of Cadence, of how Cadence and Shining Armor met, that was actually suggested by Hasbro. Because they said, look, we did the episode with Cadence and Shining Armor, and the fans love it, and we don't have any more plans to use them. You know, in our current timeline, we have no more stories for them. Can you do something in the comics to keep them going? And we're like, we can do that. So,
yeah, they were really good partners to work with. Not every license I've worked with is quite so forgiving. I worked on some of the Star Trek stuff that was a little more difficult to play with. I was up to write a Top Gun Transformers thing that had more things you couldn't do than things you could do. So the Hasbro was really good, and they would reject stuff, and they would kind of let you know why they did it or what aspect didn't work, but they wouldn't necessarily say no to a story. They would say no to part of a story. So like in the Ponies of Darkwater, I never had Luna turn back into Nightmare Moon. Like, she looks like she turned back into Nightmare Moon, but the whole point was that she faced her dark side, and she wasn't going to turn back into Nightmare Moon. And Hasbro was like, yeah, but we really want her to turn back into Nightmare Moon. So I had, it's their toy box. I had to write that stuff. But there weren't too many things that ever just got rejected because of cause. I tried to work in Awake in one. They wouldn't let me do that. And my favorite one that Andy suffered through before is when I was writing the Ponies of Darkwater, there's a scene where Nightmare Moon is throwing magic bolts at Pinkie Pie, and she's dodging all of them. And I wrote the line, miss me, now you gotta kiss me. Oh no, that would start a whole new fandom. And Hasbro's note was, that line is brilliant. We can't believe Tom wrote it. Please remove it.
Yeah. One of the secrets in doing things like this is if there's something like that you really, really, really want to get away with, you got to put like 5 more of those in the comic that are worse, that they'll cut out, and they'll ignore the one that you really want.
Okay.
We could do another 90 minutes on the stuff Hasbro told us you can't do. Mm-hmm. And I've even got some examples at my table. The Reflection storyline went through a lot of bumps because Hasbro got in a hurry, and they kind of thought, it's comic books, nobody's paying attention, so they weren't truly reading our scripts. They were just kind of skimming them. And then when they saw the artwork, they were like, you can't do this. And we're like, but you just approved it in the story. No, you can't do this. We're about to go to print. So there was some back and forth at times and in the beginning where things got rocky. But it resulted in a lot of edited pages, a lot of fan stories. When Celestia and Sombra had the romance, they had there was a moment where they kiss. And, I mean, the book was about to go to print, and Hasbro said, you can't show them kissing. So I had to redraw that page. Things like that. But in the long run, it was great for me because that page sold for a lot of money. So,
That works. So I will say one last question.
Yeah, sure.
yeah.
So, do you want to pick or?
You in the Fluttershy shirt.
Yep.
I think.
Comics are like crazy involved. You got to do the writing. Like even I noticed in the sketch phase, you even have like where the logo will be.
Right. Yeah.
Previous, so you can actually have a really big structure. How do you deal with like not getting burnout because you have to do every single stage of everything? Like how do you keep up with all of it?
There's one very important word. Paycheck.
The thing
It,
that makes
it does keep you focused, because for as much as it's what I love to do, it's also still a job, and I have to keep those things balanced because the bank wants money for my house every month, no matter how I'm feeling. But also, one of the things that helps me is that I rotate through things. So I'm writing, or I'm drawing, or I'm coloring, and it lets you kind of reboot on the thing that you are getting a little bit burned out on to work on other stuff. And because I'm freelance, I can manage my calendar to the point that I can go, yeah, I'm getting a little burned out, but also I got a 2-week trip to Italy coming up. So maybe that's
Yeah.
going to help you.
It is something that we get asked a lot, because a lot of the fandom does draw, and people ask about when you stare at that blank page and it's not working. And I when you have a deadline, you don't have time to mess around and like walk away from the paper and say, it will come to me later. No, you got to make it happen. And frankly, some of my favorite pieces that I've done are the pieces that I struggled with and had to do last second, because I just forced myself to do it and it came out better. But a lot of times when people say, well, what can I do? It's not my job. What can I do? Give yourself a deadline. If you sit down to draw on Monday and you say, I want to do this big elaborate piece, well, you've got until Wednesday. That you can reward yourself with that piece of chocolate cake or whatever if it's not a paycheck, but set something for yourself where you have a time limit. Or even if you're just sketching while you're watching TV, tell yourself, I have to have 3 sketches by the time this show is over. Just 3 rough sketches. And it makes your mind click into gear.
Yeah, and those constraints, like you find more creative solutions. Like you kind of have a default, and when that default is removed, it's one of the reasons why on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Joss Whedon wrote the silent episode, because everybody was talking about his dialogue, and he's like, okay, what if I don't do dialogue? And it forces you to find different solutions, and that stuff keeps it interesting, where you think it's, to people who aren't doing this, it feels like a constraint, but it's actually a problem-solving challenge that you really get into.
Thank you. Okay, so I can say we can wrap this up.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much for both of you for being here.
Our pleasure. We're both downstairs selling prints, doing drawings, stuff like that.
Yep.
Being
So-
charming and talking.
This carpet is the same color